people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Going away on holiday for a few weeks, and then I want to come back and push for those big fights next year. Big Saudi bill, Frank Warren show, Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk. Get me on that show. Get me a big fight on that show. Why not?
Is there anyone particular that you're looking at that you want to face?
Let's make it the first women's world title fight out in Saudi. Give me Serrano. I feel like my engine's there. I could do 12 threes. I could have done 12 threes tonight. So yeah, me, Serrano, 12 threes out in Saudi.
Raven Chapman's novel idea of perhaps fighting Amanda Serrano for all the marbles on the undercard of Fury versus Usyk. It's not a bad idea. It's actually not a bad suggestion. If anybody has the kind of money to get Amanda Serrano in the ring with Raven Chapman, it's the Saudis.
Raven Chapman, who was in action about 2 days ago, opposite the ring, Lucy Sedlakova, and she delivered the way I said she would deliver. She won a dominant points decision.
Badly bloodying Lucy Sedlakova en route to it, and for the coming year, she has set her sights on bigger fish. She's got bigger fish to fry. She wants Amanda. Few snafus, few issues with that proposition is that it would be contingent upon the Saudis actually wanting to add that fight to the Fury versus Usyk show. It would be their money they'd hope to entice Amanda Serrano with. There's that to consider.
In tandem with anything else that Amanda might have going on, Raven Chapman is not the only fighter that would like to fight Amanda in her very next fight. Sky Nicholson,
who is ranked well ahead of Raven Chapman in the World Boxing Council's ranked standings. She's ranked at number 1. She's WBC interim champion, and officially, she is the mandatory challenger to Amanda Serrano's green belt. She wants Amanda just as much as Raven does.
Is Matchroom going to make a play to do that fight in Sky Nicholson's very next fight, or is Matchroom going to make a play to do a Serrano versus Taylor rematch? Eddie Hearn has made it clear that Katie Taylor's next fight is going to be a stadium fight. They're looking at either a Chantel Cameron trilogy or an Amanda Serrano rematch. These are the fights and the options you have to consider.
When it comes to Amanda, you have to consider that she has options, more than just one option for a big fight, a big money fight, a lucrative fight. Being honest with you, I like the idea of Serrano versus Chapman a little more than Serrano versus Nicholson, because with Serrano versus Nicholson, those are opposing styles. An inside fighter versus an outside fighter.
An economic pot shotter versus a volume puncher. That's what Serrano versus Nicholson would be. Serrano versus Chapman, that would be a shootout. That would be an all-out war between two mid-range to inside volume punchers.
In terms of aesthetic and entertainment value, Serrano versus Chapman makes for a more entertaining fight, but alas, I think it's just a lot of wishful thinking. I don't see that being Raven Chapman's next fight. I don't. I would sooner expect to see Raven Chapman in the ring with former IBF champion Sarah Mahfoud, provided that she wins her next fight, or Germany's own Nina Menke.
Sarah Mahfoud would service as a common opponent between Raven and Amanda, as Amanda has already fought her. So would Brazil's own Danila Ramos, both of which are ranked in the top 10 ranked standings.
BoxRec's divisional top 10 ranked standings. It would make sense that if you want to fight Amanda but you can't get her, not quite yet, what you can do is fight some of the fighters she's fought to rate your performance against hers.
She can always do that.
Making a fight between Raven Chapman and Sarah Mahfoud, or Raven Chapman and Danila Ramos, is nowhere near as expensive as trying to make a fight between Raven and Amanda. Amanda don't come cheap.
You've got to pay to play.
Sooner expect to see Raven Chapman in the ring next year with one of Amanda's old opponents instead of Amanda Serrano herself. Amanda's got a full plate. She's got a lot of options. I don't know that this is one that she's really all that interested in. In any event, congratulations to Raven, and we'll see what happens in the coming year.
What Queensbury lines up for her?
Men's heavyweight news. Eddie Hearn has revealed the heated conversation he had with Jarrell Miller after Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder's press conference last month. He came to me and he said, "Oh, you're scared now?" I went, "I ain't fucking scared of you. I know what you did." He went, "Why didn't you back me like you backed Conor Benn?" I said, "Because I don't believe you." And he said, "Well, next time when you're in New York, I'll have someone pull up on you." And I said, "Go fuck yourself."
That Jarrell Miller would be tactless enough to actually harbor rancor towards Eddie Hearn, towards Anthony Joshua, for a self-inflicted wound. A situation that he brought on himself.
That Jarrell Miller would be tactless enough and hapless enough to blame them for what he costed himself, I could believe it, because we see that among fighters all the time, like Teofimo Lopez's varying conspiracy theories as to what happened in the George Kambosos fight. He blames everybody for that snafu but himself. He blames anybody from Matchroom to...
And what about Ryan Garcia and all the problems he has from one fight to the next? No matter how many trainers he bounces around from, no matter what happens, it's always someone else's fault.
Whatever happens, it's always everybody else's fault. In the case of Jarrell Miller, that seems to be the hierarchy of thought that he has. Oh, it's Eddie's fault and it's Anthony's fault that you tested positive for all those banned substances, and you're holding a grudge because they didn't back you the same way they're backing Conor Benn.
You're not Conor Benn, and you didn't test positive for clomiphene. In fact, you tested positive for 3 banned substances, 3 of them. GW1516, HGH, which is human growth hormone, and EPO.
Might be getting lost on a lot of people is that not all banned substances are created equal, and some can be found in food and over-the-counter supplements, whereas something like EPO, there's only one way EPO finds its way into your system, and that's if you put it there, if you were doping. And that's one of the glaring differences between Conor Benn's situation and Jarrell Miller's, but he's angry that Matchroom didn't back him.
What were they supposed to do? Act like nothing happened and let the contest go on? Is that what you were expecting?
He's still throwing a tantrum all these years later, still throwing his toys out of the pram. I see how he got the nickname Big Baby, because that's what he's acting like. He's acting like a big baby, as if it's somehow Eddie Hearn or Anthony Joshua's fault that they found all that stuff in your system. Even worse is that you got off with a slap on the wrist. Top Rank gave you a second chance, then you went over there and tested positive for even more banned substances. But you don't hold a grudge for Bob Arum the way you hold one for Eddie.
Jarrell Miller asked him, "Why didn't you back me like you backed Conor Benn?" And Eddie Hearn said, "It's because I don't believe you." And why would he? This guy has been testing positive for banned substances before he even started boxing. He tested positive for banned substances as a kickboxer. He tested positive 2 times as a boxer, and you're wondering why he didn't back you.
You're still angry that he didn't believe you? Nobody believes you. Nobody believes Jarrell Miller is innocent, but I'll go as far as saying that nobody believes Conor Benn is innocent either. So let's go with that scenario. Let's go with a scenario where what Jarrell Miller is really mad at is that most of the sport is doping. The entire sport of boxing knows that most of the sport is doping, and he feels like they're just a bunch of hypocrites who hung him out to dry. Let's go with that scenario. Let's go with that theory. Even if I do that, this is still your own fault. You're the bozo who didn't get your cycles down right. You didn't time it right. So when you test positive for 3 banned substances, it's still your fault.
You costed yourself all that money. What were you expecting, for Matchroom to cover it up for you? You're not that important.
If I go with the hypocrisy scenario, where what Jarrell Miller is really mad about is that he views Eddie as a hypocrite. He's a hypocrite because he, like everybody else in the industry, knows that most of these fighters are doping. So why choose to make an example out of Jarrell? Well, it wasn't Eddie's decision to make an example out of you. You did that to yourself. You didn't cover up what you were doing well enough, and you paid for it. That's not his fault.
I think American fighters wrestle with entitlement issues more than any other country's fighters from any other region. These guys are so self-important, so fucking self-entitled, that this guy could actually test positive for not one banned substance, but 3. And he still tries to make it somebody else's fault.
Zero accountability or situational awareness. Because how did you think that conversation was going to go? What do you imagine would happen if you threaten Eddie Hearn, or worse, you actually assault him? Well, there goes another payday. There goes that big card in Saudi for Jarrell.
The guy's an idiot.
Which is likely why he didn't get his cycles down right 2 times in a row while using 6 banned substances. Is that what it was? The bottom line here is, it doesn't matter how I slice up this scenario and what I'm willing to entertain. There's no way you tell this story where Jarrell Miller is the victim, where he's innocent, where he's the good guy. You're the bad guy in every version of this story, so just fucking own it. You're lucky. You're very lucky to be here now.
I'm not so altruistic that I don't see the value in Jarrell Miller and potential fights for him down the line. I was one of the first to say that. For all his faults and all his drawbacks and all his anti-doping fiascos, there's money to be made in Jarrell Miller.
I am neither naive or so altruistic that I would deny that. Jarrell Miller is still a charismatic bad guy. He plays the heel beautifully. Though if you're gonna be the heel and you're gonna be the bad guy, just fucking own it and stop looking for sympathy. Nobody's got sympathy for you. Everything that happened is your own fault.
Modern day obsession with getting people to feel sorry for you. What is the race to the pity party?
You tested positive for something like 5 or 6 banned substances 2 times in a row. Who the fuck do you expect to believe anything you have to say? You should just own it. Count your blessings that you have the opportunity to box on a big show like this one, because it would have been very easy to cast you out and keep you out and make an example out of you to where you don't get to box nowhere anymore.
Consider yourself lucky, Tubby.
In men's welterweight news, Angel Garcia, the father of former welterweight champion Danny Garcia, if you can believe this, he said Terence Crawford ain't no killer. Odd that he would say that, given the amount of time that both Danny Garcia and Angel Garcia have spent talking down Terence Crawford while simultaneously avoiding a fight with him. Oh, they'll talk. They'll talk.
Oh, they'll say this, and they'll say that. They'll say a lot of things, but they won't do much. What they won't do under any circumstances whatsoever is fight him. I mean, if he's not a killer, you shouldn't have a problem, right?
At one point, it seemed likely that the pair would rekindle their rivalry in the pros, but with Crawford stating time and time again that he's only interested in fighting Canelo Alvarez, Angel has moved on, as if Angel or Danny were ever interested in fighting Terence Crawford. It's important to note that the author of this article, a guy who goes by the name Hans Themistode, he's a big PBC fan. He's a big PBC guy. And that's why his distorted account of events is not what really happened. But the article continued, as for media pundits and fans who continue to praise Crawford with superlatives, Angel believes it's well-deserved. But for those who are convinced that Crawford can simply waltz through anyone without breaking a sweat, Angel rolls his eyes incredulously as he vehemently disagrees. He ain't no killer, said Angel Garcia to AB Boxing News. He can be beaten too, perhaps he can, but not by your chicken shit son.
Let's address this article. In the upper column, you see that Hans Themistode wrote, with Crawford stating time and time again that he's only interested in fighting Canelo, Angel has moved on.
I feel like that entire sentence is a false representation of things, because what exactly is it that Angel Garcia is moving on from? Neither he nor his son were ever in pursuit of a Terence Crawford fight, even after Terence Crawford's people, then Top Rank, made him an offer. A $3 million offer with an upside of the pay-per-view. This was years ago, back in 2019. And to that offer, this is what Angel Garcia had to say.
Why they don't bring Machenko to 147? And then he could have 4 world titles like Canelo.
Angel Garcia, with a straight face, was volunteering a lightweight to fight Terence Crawford instead of his son.
4 division champions, that makes him happy.
Right.
You get it?
No, I get what you're saying.
Like, what is the problem here?
Problem is, people wanted your son to fight Terence Crawford, and you'd rather a lightweight stand in his place because underneath it all, you're afraid of what Terence would do to your son.
Right.
Like, why are you worrying about PBC fighters?
Well, he's saying, well,
I know, I understand they saying 47 will step it up, but he's a WBO champion.
Right.
You got 100 top WBO ranked.
Right.
100 people you can pick out of. Fight your number 1 contender.
Well, in December of 2019, when this interview was conducted by way of AB Boxing News, the number 1 contender at the time was your son. It was Danny Garcia, and he did try to fight him. You'd prefer to recommend that he fight a lightweight instead.
They're kind of... Go ahead.
What you gotta understand, brother, is that everybody has their own lane.
Own lane of chicken shits.
Their own lane, barbarian. Everybody has... Why they worrying about PBC 47?
Maybe they have no one for Crawford to fight.
Yeah, but they got plenty of people to fight. You got WBO, I just told you that.
Right. Well, maybe...
Your main challenger.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? They didn't want to fight Terence then, and they don't want to fight him now. Consider that in 2019, Danny Garcia had never headlined a pay-per-view before. He'd never been on pay-per-view. That's what Top Rank was offering him. A guarantee of $3 million and an upside of the pay-per-view. In spite of that, they didn't want to fight Terence then, and they still don't want to fight him now. If you need an example of this,
look at the screen. As recently as 2 months ago, as recently as September of this year, in Danny Garcia's own words, "I'm rich, bro. I don't need to fight you. I've been making millions."
plus, I ain't trying to pay all those sanctioning fees. I can use some of that money to buy more real estate. Oh, so you don't want to fight Terence because you're making millions and you don't want to have to pay sanctioning fees for his belts, but you're willing to pay a sanctioning fee for Lara's.
That's who he's supposed to be fighting at some point next year. Arislandi Lara for Lara's WBA middleweight title, because Lara is so much more relevant in boxing here today than Terence Crawford. Just call a spade a spade. You're more comfortable boxing an old man who barely boxes because you're afraid of what would happen to you if you box Terence Crawford. You always have been.
You don't want to end up like Errol Spence Jr. or Jose Benavidez, a common opponent between you. And what's the difference between your performance against Jose and Terence's performance against Jose? The difference is he knocked him out, and he'd knock you out.
When you fought Jose, it went the distance. When he fought Jose years ago, way before you fought him, when he was still an unbeaten fighter, Terence stopped him. Terence knocked him out. You couldn't do that. And I know that triangle theories don't work, but this ain't a triangle. Terence Crawford is head and shoulders a better fighter, a way better fighter than Danny Garcia.
You often hear it said in a sport of boxing that triangle theories don't work, and they don't. But once you have several common opponents with the same guy, it stops being a triangle. Sean Porter beat you, didn't he? And so did Errol Spence. And the both of them were knocked out by Terence Crawford.
It's not a triangle anymore. He's just better than you are.
So when your daddy, after all these years of you swerving a fight with him, has the audacity to claim that he's not a killer and he can be beaten, maybe he can. Maybe he can. But not by you.
You're an opportunist. You're a chicken shit.
Go wait for that Lara fight to get rescheduled. Fight for his WBA title and see who gives a damn.